Have you ever been driving alone on a rainy night and felt like someone was watching you? Most people would say it's just your imagination. But what happened to a man named Arif on a stormy night is something he swears was completely real. Even today, years later, he refuses to drive alone whenever heavy rain begins to fall. This story has been shared many times by people who know him, and the details have never changed. It was close to midnight when Arif finished his shift at a factory outside the city. Dark clouds covered the sky. Thunder echoed in the distance, and rain poured down so heavily that the windshield wipers struggled to keep the glass clear. The roads were almost empty, and the few streetlights along the highway flickered weakly through the storm. As he drove through the darkness, he couldn't shake the feeling that something felt wrong about that night. About 30 minutes into his journey, he noticed a figure standing beside the road. At first, he thought it was a signpost, or perhaps a tree branch moving in the wind. But as he got closer, he realized it was a young woman. She stood completely still under the pouring rain without an umbrella or any kind of protection from the weather. Her light-colored dress was soaked, and her long dark hair hung over her shoulders. What unsettled Arif the most was that she wasn't waving for help or trying to stop passing vehicles. She was simply standing there, staring ahead. Feeling sorry for her, Arif slowed his car and rolled down the window slightly. The woman leaned toward the opening and politely asked if he could give her a ride to a nearby village. Her voice was calm and gentle, although something about her presence made him uncomfortable. He couldn't leave someone stranded in such terrible weather. He unlocked the door and she climbed into the back seat. The moment she entered the vehicle, a strange chill spread through the cabin. Arif assumed it was because she was drenched from the rain. For the next several minutes, silence filled the car. The only sounds were the rain striking the roof, the rhythmic movement of the windshield wipers, and occasional thunder from above. Every now and then, Arif glanced into the rearview mirror. The woman sat motionless, staring out the side window. She didn't check her phone, didn't ask questions, and didn't attempt to make conversation. It felt unnatural. Eventually, Arif asked where exactly she lived. The woman slowly turned her head toward him and quietly mentioned the name of a village located several kilometers ahead. Then she added a sentence that immediately made his skin crawl. She said, "My family still waits for me every year." Confused, Arif wanted to ask what she meant, but before he could speak, she turned back toward the window and remained silent. The rain continued to intensify, reducing visibility to only a few meters. Arif focused on the road, gripping the steering wheel tightly as they approached the village turnoff. A few minutes later, he reached the location she had described. Wanting to tell her they had arrived, he glanced into the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. Arif's heart nearly stopped. He slammed on the brakes and immediately turned around. There was nobody there. The woman had vanished. The doors remained locked. The windows were closed, and there was no possible way she could have left the vehicle without him noticing. Panicked, he stepped out into the rain and searched around the roadside using his phone's flashlight. He called out repeatedly, but no answer came. The empty road stretched into darkness in both directions. The only unusual thing he found was a small scarf lying neatly on the back seat where the woman had been sitting moments earlier. Terrified and desperate for answers, Arif continued into the village and stopped at a small tea shop that was still open despite the storm. Inside were a handful of elderly villagers, drinking tea and talking quietly. Arif explained everything that had happened and showed them the scarf. The atmosphere changed instantly. One of the old men stared at the scarf with wide eyes before asking exactly where Arif had picked up the woman. After hearing the location, the villagers exchanged nervous glances. Finally, the oldest man in the room revealed a story that had been told in the village for decades. More than 20 years earlier, a young woman from the village had died during a violent storm. According to local accounts, her family's vehicle crashed on the same stretch of road where Arif had found the mysterious passenger. She never made it home. Since that night, travelers occasionally reported seeing a woman matching her description, standing beside the road whenever heavy rain fell after dark. Some claimed they offered her a ride. Others said she briefly appeared in their vehicles before disappearing without a trace. Arif wanted to dismiss the story as superstition, but then the old man pointed toward a framed photograph hanging on the wall. Arif slowly looked up. The blood drained from his face. The woman in the photograph was identical to the passenger he had picked up. The same eyes, the same hair, the same face. Beneath the photograph was a date showing that she had died more than 20 years ago. Arif immediately left the village and drove home. He barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered the woman's pale face reflected in the rearview mirror and the chilling sentence she had spoken. "My family still waits for me every year." Over the following days, he tried convincing himself that exhaustion, stress, and the storm had caused him to imagine things. Then something happened that shattered every logical explanation. 3 days later, while preparing to leave for work, he opened his garage and discovered the scarf sitting neatly folded on the driver's seat of his car. He was absolutely certain he had taken it inside the house and placed it in a storage drawer. Nobody in his family had moved it. Nobody could explain how it returned. From that day forward, Arif refused to travel alone during storms. Years have passed, but he still remembers every detail of that terrifying night. Sometimes, when heavy rain falls and thunder rolls across the sky, he finds himself checking the rearview mirror, but never for too long. Because deep inside, he fears that one day he might see that silent passenger sitting there once again, staring back at him from the darkness.